Hi, Keith here from Academy of Bass. This is part 2 of my introduction to jazz improvisation, or more specifically, starting to improvise over a 2-5-1 chord progression. If you haven't seen part 1, I'll post a link to that below. I'd really recommend that you pause this, go back and watch that first lesson, because this follows on directly, and the things I covered in the previous lesson will absolutely help you get the most out of what I'm going to be looking at today. So far, I've looked at using common tones or common notes, and also using 2 notes from each chord. Now I'm going to take things a step further and look at something called target notes. But just before I do, the starting point for this is going to be to look at the key that we're playing in, which is C major. The 2-5-1 chord progression is obviously D minor 7 to G7 to C major 7, and whilst knowing the structure and also the names of the notes in each chord is important, it's equally important to know the scale of the parent key too. I'm going to assume that you already know the C major scale. By the way, there is a PDF for this lesson. I'll post a link to that below. It's got everything in that I'm going to be talking about. I've also included the backing tracks that I'm going to be using. And there's a bunch of additional exercises and things that you can use to work on developing your improvising too. So do make sure you grab a copy of that. I'm really quickly going to look at how many different ways we can play the C major scale across the neck. So we can play it here starting from the 3rd fret of the A string. We can also play it from the 8th fret of the E string and the 15th fret of the A string, and we can play it over 2 octaves too. We can even play it with different fingerings. Understanding that and being able to play it fluently across the neck will not only benefit your improvising, it will also benefit your overall bass playing too. And if you want to take this a step further, you can even play that scale starting from the root note of each chord. So D minor 7, we've got D here at the 5th fret of the A string, and we're just going to follow that with the rest of the notes in the C major scale. D, E, F, G, A, B, C, and of course we can take it to the octave D, and that's the D Dorian mode. Similarly with G7, starting from G here at the 3rd fret of the E string, we get G, A, B, C, D, E, F and G, and that's the G Mixolydian mode. The C major scale is referred to as the Ionian mode. I really don't want you to get hung up on this. I certainly don't. There's an awful lot of confusion surrounding the modes and using them, but if you start simply, it can be much easier than you think to get to grips with them. So let's start by having a quick listen to how that scale sounds. Second fingering. Third. D Dorian, G Mixolydian, C Ionian, D Dorian again, G Mixolydian, C Ionian, D Dorian, G Mixolydian, and C Ionian. So they all sounded really good, and for the most part all I was doing was playing scales ascending. Of course you can play them in any way that you want, but for simplicity I chose to play them ascending only. The only things that I did differently were, whilst I was playing the C major scale, towards the end I chose to play the scale right up and down the neck. So I was obviously focusing on the notes, but the fingering is completely irrelevant. In fact, there was no discipline at all to the fingering, but this is a really good thing to do because it can help free you up from the scale pattern. So I started here and I played C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, C, B, A, G, F, E, D, C, B, A, G, F, E, D, C, B, A, G, F, E. F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, C, B, A, G, F, E, D, C, B, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and A, or something very similar to that. And I did a similar thing when I played the modal patterns. I played a single string variation of each scale. Each one started at the 5th fret here. So the D Dorian started at the 5th fret of the A string. G Mixolydian from the 5th fret of the D string. And the C Ionian, or the C major scale, from the 5th fret of the G string. So now I'm going to look at target notes, and really simply, a target note is just any note in a chord that you choose to land on or that you're aiming for. So I'm going to start nice and simply, and I'm going to use the root note of D minor 7. Now I'm playing this here at the 5th fret of the D string. You can play these anywhere, but for simplicity and convenience, I'm choosing to play this here. And once I've played this D, I'm going to follow it with 4 notes from the C major scale, starting from the D again. So I'm playing D, then I'm going to play D, E, F, G. That's our target note for G7, and of course it's the root note of G7. And from there we're going to play G, A, B, C, and that's our root note, our target note of C major 7. We're going to do the same thing, but this time start from F, which is the flattened 3rd of D minor 7. So I'm here at the 8th fret of the A string, and I'm going to play the same thing. F, 4 notes from the C major scale, F, G, A, B. This is our target note for G7, and that's the 3rd of G7. And then we get B, C, D, E. And likewise, that's the 3rd of C major 7. And now we're going to start from A, which is the 5th of D minor 7. So again, I'm going to start here at the 12th fret of the A string. So I'm going to play A, then we're playing A, B, C, D, which is the 5th of G7. And then we're going to play D, E, F, G. And that's also the 5th of C major 7. And then finally we're going to start with C, and that's the flattened 7th of D minor 7. So I'm starting here at the 10th fret of the D string. Going to play C, then we're playing C, D, E, F. Now F is the flattened 7th of G7, and from there we've got F, G, A, B, and that's the major 7 of C major 7. So let's have a listen to how they sound against the chords. So I'm starting with the root notes D, G and C. Now I'm going to start with F, the flattened 3rd of D minor 7. B, the 3rd of G, and E, the 3rd of C major 7. Now I'm going to start with A, the 5th of D minor 7. D, the 5th of G7, and G, the 5th of C major 7. And now we're starting with C, the flattened 7th of D minor 7, F, the flattened 7th of G, and B, the major 7 of C major 7. So apart from the fact that all of those lines sound really good, the other nice thing about this approach is that you can start on any note from the D minor 7 chord, and as long as you play a 4-note ascending sequence, you're guaranteed to land on a note that belongs to the next chord, G7, which means that whatever you play, you're going to sound good. Now, don't forget that the PDF has a bunch of extra things in it, and this is a typical example. So again, starting from D, the root note of D minor 7, from this G, the root note of G7, instead of playing a 4-note ascending line, I'm going to play a 4-note descending line. I'm going to play G, F, E, E. So whilst I'm playing 4 notes descending, I'm actually doubling up on one of those notes. I've got to make it fit the chord, but it still sounds really good. And the PDF has a similar example starting from every single note in the D minor 7 chord. So don't forget to grab a copy of that. Just before I finish off, I'm going to go back to this line that I just played, because in every single one of those examples I hung on the last note, which lasted for a whole bar of C major 7. So what I'm going to do now is look at in each position for notes that are close by to us that belong to the C major 7 chord, so we can play a finishing phrase. So we've got F here, the flattened third of D minor 7, and from this E, the third of C major 7, we've got B here, the major 7, or from the E we've got C, the root, or we can even play from E to G, the fifth. So right under our hands we've got every single note in the C major 7 chord. So if we go back down to the root note D, from this C, the root note of C major 7, we've got B, the major 7 here, G, the fifth, E, the third, C, the root. And if we go to the line that started from A, the fifth of D minor 7, we've got G here, which is the fifth of C, and just like the previous example, we've got all the chord notes right under our hand: G, the fifth, E, the third, C, the root, and B, the major 7. And the last line, starting from C, the flattened seventh of D minor 7, from this B, the major 7, we've got C, the root, back to B, the major 7, G, the fifth, E, the third, C, the root, B, the major 7. So let's have a listen to those now. I'm starting from F, and from E, the third of C, I'm jumping down to B, the major 7. Now to C, the root, If you've started looking at harmony in any way, you might be familiar with the term extension. An extension is just any interval beyond a seventh. Now, every seventh chord, regardless of whether it's major or minor, has a root, a third, a fifth, and a seventh. And the extensions beyond that are the 9th, 11th, and 13th. So to do this fluently, you really need a reasonable command of harmony, but I'm going to give you a head start. So starting with the D minor 7, I'm going to choose an E, which is the 9th of D. Now, you might be thinking, what's an E, a 9th, got to do with a D minor 7 chord? But jazz musicians, or anyone that improvises, will often introduce new notes to embellish the sound of what they're playing and add new colours and change the sound of what they're playing. And adding a 9th to a minor 7 chord is a really common addition, and it makes it sound really sweet. So we're going to play that E over D minor. Really nice sound, and we're going to treat that E as a common tone, because when we move to G7 we're going to retain it, because that E becomes the 13th of G. And what we've done by doing this is we've altered the harmony. So instead of having a D minor 7 to a G7 chord progression, we've now got a D minor 9 to a G13. And when we change to C major 7, we're going to retain that E because it becomes the third of C major 7. So I'm going to play through this and use that extension, and then I'm also going to add some other extensions into the mix so that you can hear exactly what they sound like, and you can hear the impact on the music as I change from note to note. This E's really nice, it's a really sweet sound. I'm going to try A now, which is the 5th of D, or the 9th of G, or the 13th of C. That's a nice sound too. I'm going to try G, which is the 11th of D, or the root of G, and the 5th of C. I'm also going to try F, the flattened third of D, the flattened 7th of G, and the 11th of C. I'm not sure I like that, but I might want to resolve that to E. I'm going to play that again and resolve it up to G this time. And lastly, I'm going to play B, the 13th of D, the 3rd of G, and the major 7 of C. I really do hope that you can hear just how great all of the lines that I've looked at sound, and the reason for that is because there's no outside playing. What I mean by that is there are no tension notes or notes that don't either belong to the chords or the scale. So everything we're playing is either a chord note or a note from within the key, so it can't sound anything other than really good. And if you're playing this way, not only are you going to improve your confidence, you're going to improve your ability to pick out chord notes and target chord notes, and also pick out scale runs too. And by doing that, you're going to build a melodic repertoire and also a rhythmic repertoire too. Now, I know I've not really spoken about rhythm much today because that's a subject of a completely different lesson. By the way, let me know in the comments if you've enjoyed the lesson. It's always nice to get positive feedback, and don't forget to grab that PDF. Feel free to give things the thumbs up and support the channel by subscribing. Thanks for joining me. Look forward to seeing you again, and in the meantime, happy practicing.